I went to visit my son on Christmas Day, expecting warmth, laughter, and the kind of cheer that softens even the hardest of hearts. The house was decorated beautifully, lights twinkling across the porch, and laughter spilling from the living room. But the moment I stepped inside, I noticed my granddaughter's eyes fix on me in a way that sent a shiver down my spine. She hurried over, grabbed my fingers tightly, and leaned close enough that only I could hear her trembling voice. "Grandpa, please, don't let Daddy see you near the garden. He's hiding something bad." My chest tightened. The innocence in her tone made my blood run cold. She didn't giggle or smirk like a child spinning a tale. No, her small hands trembled, her lips pressed hard against the secret she had just handed me. I smiled weakly, patted her hair, and excused myself. The chatter of family covered my steps as I slipped toward the back of the house. The garden door creaked when I opened it slightly, and I slipped out into the cold December air. Frost clung to the grass, and my breath fogged as I pressed myself against the wall, peering toward the garden's edge. A few minutes passed, my heart pounding so loud I worried he might hear it. Then I saw him, my son, standing there in the pale winter light. He wasn't alone. His shoulders hunched as he leaned close to a man I didn't recognize. Their voices were low, urgent, and I caught fragments. "Money tonight. No one can know, she'll never find out." My blood turned heavy in my veins. He passed the stranger a small box, wrapped not in Christmas paper, but in thick black tape. The man slipped it inside his coat and vanished into the shadows. My son lingered a moment longer, his face hard and cold in a way I'd never seen before. Then he looked toward the house, toward me, and for a split second I thought our eyes met. I ducked back, pressing myself flat against the wall. My granddaughter's whisper replayed in my mind like an echo I couldn't silence. What had he just handed over? What secret was heavy enough to make his own daughter break the fragile boundary of trust between child and parent? And that was the moment I realized Christmas was no longer about family joy. It was about uncovering the truth, one that could shatter everything I thought I knew about my son. Before we continue, be part of our growing family by hitting that subscribe button. And here's something fun. Share your name and tell us where you're tuning in from in the comments. We might feature you with a shout out in our next video, because your support truly means the world to us. Now, let's proceed. I went to visit my son on Christmas Day, expecting nothing more than fairy lights, too sweet cocoa, and the easy warmth that comes when a family tries to forget its year-long frictions. The porch twinkled, the wreath smelled of pine and orange peel, and from inside came the sound of carols and clinking cutlery. I stepped in, stamped snow from my boots, and was washing the road from my palms when small fingers wrapped around mine. My granddaughter looked up with eyes that didn't belong to a child, eyes that had learned to hold storms without blinking. She tugged me down, breath warm against my ear. "Grandpa," she whispered, "don't let Daddy see you by the garden. He's hiding something bad." Then she was gone, skip-stepping back into the tinsel and laughter, as if secrets could be folded into wrapping paper and set beneath a tree. Her warning rode the rhythm of my pulse as I moved through greetings. My son's smile was the kind that showed teeth, not peace. He hugged me too quick, patted my shoulder, asked about traffic, asked about the old house, asked about anything but us. I watched him without watching him, the way a fisherman watches the surface for a ripple that betrays the shadow beneath. He kept glancing toward the back door. That door had been painted red in summer. Now winter made it a darker red, the kind that hides stains. At the table, my daughter-in-law asked if I'd say grace. Words came easy, but my attention was in the garden already, where night pressed its face to the glass and waited to be let in. When the moment arrived, it arrived reluctantly. I excused myself to take a call, though my phone was dark as a pebble. I slipped down the hall, past the family photos where my son's smile had changed over the years, boyish pride bending into adult calculation, then eased the back door open. Cold air curled into my lungs. I stood behind the wall's angle, the stone damp against my coat, and watched over the rim of the wintered hydrangea. The garden looked like a clock stopped at midnight. Snow was only a rumor on the grass, frost doing the work instead, turning every blade into a needle of light. I heard him before I saw him. My son, speaking in the voice he uses when he wants something he shouldn't want. He wasn't alone. A man shadowed up beside the apple tree, the one I planted the day my son was born. They spoke softly. Words fell like coins. Tonight, no one knows. She won't find out. You said the papers. My son cut himself short. He reached into his coat and pulled a small box bound in black tape. Not festive, not kind. He passed it to the stranger with a hand that didn't tremble. The stranger slid it into his own coat, glanced toward the house, and left by the side gate, the hinge complaining like an old debt. My son stayed a moment longer, staring at the apple tree as if it had betrayed him by growing. He turned, and the angle of his face made a knife of the porch light. I leaned back behind the wall. In that brief second, I felt the tug of two fathers, the father I'd been to him, and the father I had to be now, to the little girl who trusted me enough to risk a whisper. The carols inside blurred, the cold lifted hair on my wrists. I told myself I would walk back in, drink cocoa, and let the world be small again. Instead, I counted to 30, then followed the footprints that weren't supposed to exist. The side gate was an old habit. I'd used it for years to bring in surprises no one should see until the doorbell rang. A new bicycle, a rescued dog. Once even a piano bench I refinished in the shed. Tonight, I used it to step into the space where my son had just traded innocence for silence. The snow remembered him sharply. His boot prints cut across the lawn to the tree, then angled away to the fence where the stranger had leaned, perhaps to watch the house. I crouched, feeling the ground's hard truth through my knees. There were two kinds of prints at the fence. My son's, deep, committed. The stranger's, lighter, the kind you make when you don't intend to be caught by the earth. A scrap of black tape lay like a dark eyelash near the apple tree. I pressed it to my thumb. The glue was new. My son had rewrapped whatever that box had once been. Documents, I guessed, because paper makes a shape like that when you want to pretend it's nothing worth singing about. The wind shifted. Kitchen laughter spilled out the cracked window over the sink, and in it I heard my granddaughter's voice rise and fall the way a bird's does when the cat is near. It sharpened me. I scanned the fence line where ivy never quite dies. A glove mark, clear as confession, smudged the frost on a post cap. Dad? The word came from behind me, quiet but edged. I stood and turned. My son stood in the doorway, arms crossed, breath smoking in the cold. You lost? He asked without a smile. I was checking the stars, I said. They look different from here. From the garden? He stepped out, shut the door behind him. The bolt clicked. It's cold. Come inside. In a minute, I said. You've got frost on your collar. Long time to be out for a man with guests. Fresh air, he replied. Keeps me patient. We stood close enough to see the steam leaving the other's mouth. He had my height and his mother's ability to lie without blinking. I had age, and the kind of memory that turns every son's excuse into a page from a book you've read before. He glanced toward the fence gate, almost involuntary, then back at me, catching himself. It was small, but the world is built on small things. He put a hand on my shoulder, guided me gently toward the door. His palm felt like a promise he didn't intend to keep. Let's not make tonight complicated, he murmured. Some nights are born that way, I said. He pretended not to hear. We went inside. After gifts and pie. After my granddaughter fell asleep with new socks on and a candy cane melting the corner of a pillowcase, the house stilled. My daughter-in-law carried dishes. My son disappeared to take a call. I offered to stack plates and was told to sit and rest. I've learned that's what people say when they don't want you near the places where truth accidentally shows in silver. I excused myself to the hall bathroom instead and passed his office door, closed, but not quite. A gust from the heating vent nudged it, and an inch of view became a mile. Inside, the desk lamp burned a yellow pool on papers and a leather blotter. The office always smelled faintly of printer toner and ambition. On the desk lay a blue folder, its tab labeled in my son's neat hand. POA, final. I pushed the door with 2 fingers. Its side open. The folder's top page was a notarized draft, power of attorney, naming my son as agent in the event of my incapacity or unavailability. The principal's name was mine. The signature looked like mine too, until it didn't. He'd practiced. He'd practiced until the angle of my R and the slope of my D were close enough to pass at a glance. The notary stamp was crisp. The seal was from a county I hadn't visited in years. Under it, copies, bank account summaries, a checklist titled Transfer Sequence, a typed plan with times. December 26th. Meet Mr. Hale 9 o'clock. Deliver originals, box. 10:30. File with bank. Noon. Call dad. 12:30. Announce stay at clinic. 1400 hours. Board meeting agenda update. The words that snagged hardest were the gentlest. Announce stay at clinic. I could hear the script. Dad's been under stress. He's asked to rest. We'll take care of everything. A sentence like a bandage pressed over a knife. I heard steps in the hall and slid the folder back as I found it, the hinge of my breath catching. My granddaughter's face appeared in the crack like a moon. He's on the phone again, she mouthed. Then, braver, do you need help? A child should never have to ask that of a grandfather. Not yet, I whispered. But soon. She nodded like a soldier given a simple order and vanished on cat feet. I closed the office softly, returned to the couch, and felt the shape of my life tilt. Money makes some men inventive and others clumsy. Fear of losing it makes both kinds cruel. If the box I'd seen in the garden held the original documents, then tonight had been the handoff. The man by the fence, Mr. Hale, would be the one who knows how to make bad paperwork look good. The plan was clean. Declare me unfit, move assets, shepherd me to a clinic where phones are supervised and inconvenient stories are called symptoms. It would have worked on many fathers. It would have worked on me. Had my granddaughter not chosen courage over comfort. Fear is fast, but preparation is faster when you've lived long enough to polish old instincts. While the house slept, I texted 2 numbers from my car with the dome light off. My attorney, who owed me a kindness from 20 years back, and the banker who'd sent me cards every birthday since my wife died because I'd held his hand during a market collapse. I sent no drama, only nouns and times. Urgent. Possible forged POA. Need restraining hold on account changes. Meeting 7 a.m., 26th, quiet. Then I slept not at all and waited for morning to climb the window like a slow rescue. At dawn I thanked them for the visit, hugged my granddaughter long enough to let her know I'd heard her heart, and told my son I'd be by tomorrow to go over a few things. He smiled. That's perfect, Dad. I have a plan to make your life easier. We held each other's eyes until the truth in the room felt like smoke. The 7 a.m. meeting happened in a bank office that smells like carpet and caution. My attorney skimmed the copies I'd photographed and muttered a small, satisfied noise men make when the law lines up with decency. Signature's a near miss, he said. Notary stamp is stolen or complicit. Either way, voidable. We'll file a protective affidavit today. Bank will freeze any POA activity pending in-person verification. You'll also sign a new durable POA, naming 2 agents jointly, neither of whom is your son. I named my attorney and my banker. It felt like taking a weight off the beam holding up a house that had begun to lean. Next, I said, I need a decoy. I told them about the box, the delivery, and the noon timetable. We drafted a short message for my son, feeling overwhelmed, thinking of taking a break after the holidays. Can we talk tomorrow at lunch? We sent it at 10:15. Bait hung well in a slow stream. Meanwhile, my attorney filed notices, a fraud alert at the recorder's office, a letter to the notary's licensing board, a courtesy email to the local police fraud unit inviting them to look into Mr. Hale's pattern. I asked for one last thing, a quiet private investigator to trail our stranger from the garden if he surfaced at the bank. We're not hunting, I said. We're observing. He nodded. I had no interest in spectacle. I'd lived long enough to know the finest revenge is a correction carried out in daylight, witnessed by those who need to learn which fences are real. At 11:50, my son texted, Lunch at 12:30? I'll swing by the house and pick you up. My attorney raised an eyebrow. He thinks he's ahead. I smiled without humor. Let's let him keep thinking. My son arrived exactly on time, as men do when time is their alibi. He greeted the banker by first name, shook my attorney's hand with the practiced warmth of a man who has chaired meetings where compassion is line-itemed, then steered us toward a small conference room with glass walls and a view of the lobby Christmas tree. Dad and I have a few updates, he told the banker. He's decided to make some changes to his accounts. Of course, the banker said, folding his hands. Before we begin, we'll need to verify identity and capacity in person. Policy. He said it like a weather report. My son's smile thinned. Naturally. We sat. My son slid a neat stack of papers across the table. Originals, crisp. The black tape box, now untapped, sat beside them. A little coffin that had already served its purpose. We'll just file these, he said, and then Dad can get the rest he needs. The word rest made my mouth taste like a penny. Wonderful, my attorney said. Let's take them one at a time. He lifted the first page, examined the signature, and laid it beside a fresh sheet. Mr. Carson, he said to the banker, as counsel to Mr. Reed. He tipped his head toward me. I'm informing the bank we've filed an affidavit contesting any and all powers of attorney executed in Mr. Reed's name that are not personally acknowledged before you today. Here's the filing receipt. Additionally, here is Mr. Reed's new durable power of attorney naming me and you as joint agents. Co-signature required. He handed over the clean paper like a freshly laundered truth. My son didn't flinch. He folded his hands and looked at me as if we were discussing football. Dad, I thought we'd agreed. We didn't, I said, gentle. You monologued. I listened. The banker cleared his throat. Given this, he said, tapping the affidavit, the bank will place a hold on any actions under the presented documents pending internal review. We'll also need to contact the notary office. The notary's office is already contacted, my attorney said softly. They're very interested in how their stamp went on vacation without them. Something in my son's jaw ticked. He gathered the papers with a tight motion and slid them back toward his side of the table. We don't need to make this hostile, he said. Dad's tired. He asked for help. His eyes flickered to me. Tell them. I will, I said. I asked for help. I asked my granddaughter for help. She told me you were hiding something in the garden. That landed. The lobby's fairy lights reflected in the glass. A child tugged a mother's sleeve near the tree. Somewhere, a printer woke and whirred. My son's mouth pressed into a line that tried to be thin and ended up trembling. The door opened. A man in a charcoal coat stepped in, my attorney's investigator. He nodded once to counsel and handed him a phone. A video played without sound. The side gate, the exchange, my son's hand placing the black tape box into Mr. Hill's coat, the glance toward the house. A time stamp glowed in the corner. Observation, my attorney said. Not accusation. But enough, I think, to warrant a pause. He slid the phone to the banker, who watched without commentary, then returned it, palms flat on the table like a judge with no gavel and no need of one. My son's shoulders dropped, as if the weight he'd been lifting had finally informed him it was made of himself. For a long moment, he looked younger, the boy who'd once asked me if trees slept and whether money ever forgave the hands that held it too tightly. When he finally spoke, his voice was smaller than the room. It was supposed to be clean, he said. You'd be comfortable. I'd handle the noise. No one would have to watch you fade. I'm not fading, I said. I'm watching. I let the word sit. And so is your daughter. Revenge, people say, should be spectacular. I've learned it should be surgical. We left the bank with 3 agreements, each of them quiet. First, my son would resign from the board of my small company for 12 months, during which independent auditors, handpicked by the banker, not by me, would examine every account he'd touched. Second, the forged documents and the notary matter would be referred to the authorities by my attorney, with a statement from me advocating for diversion if contrition was real and restitution complete. Third, a trust for my granddaughter's education and well-being would be funded immediately, administered by the banker, with my daughter-in-law as co-trustee once her own counsel confirmed her non-involvement. Consequences, not fireworks. When we stepped onto the sidewalk, winter sunlight made the world honest. My son stood with his hands in his pockets, scuffing a line into the salt. "You could have destroyed me," he said, not looking up. "I could have," I agreed. "You tried to disappear me. That's not a small thing." He swallowed. "I thought I was protecting our name. The board, there's pressure." The clinic idea was a placeholder until I stopped being inconvenient, I said, and he flinched as if a bell had rung too close to his ear. "You forgot what the name is for. It's not for plaques. It's for people." He nodded a jerky nod that belonged to a boy, not a man. "What do I do now?" "You start by telling your daughter the truth. Not the adult version. The truth." I looked down the street where traffic moved like a river that never learns your name. "Then you show up every day for a year and do boring, generous things no one claps for. After that, you ask me if I believe you've changed. If I say no, you keep doing them. If I say yes, you keep doing them anyway." That evening, I returned to the house with a gift that wasn't wrapped. My granddaughter met me at the door with a seriousness that only children and judges possess. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one where pie had cooled and plans had been almost made, and listened while her father stumbled through a confession. He didn't say everything. I watched the corners where lies like to hide, but he said enough to plant a seed in the soil he'd salted. She listened with her hands flat on the table like mine. When he was done, she climbed down, walked around, and hugged him with a small, fierce forgiveness that didn't let him off any hooks. After she went up to bed, he and I stood in the garden. The apple tree kept our secrets, as it always had. Snow dusted the fence like a new rule. "Why the apple tree?" I asked softly. He shrugged. "It felt like a place you'd understand." "I do," I said. "I planted it on the day you were born. I wanted you to grow into something that fed people." I touched the bark. "You still can, but you'll have to prune what you've become." We stood in the cold until the tips of our ears stung. Before I left, he reached into his coat and handed me the black-taped box, now empty. "I kept it," he said, "to remind me that shortcuts are just long falls disguised as bridges." I took it. It weighed nothing in everything. Inside the house, my granddaughter's voice floated down the stairs, calling for another glass of water, then for me to tuck her in the good way. I went up, sat on the edge of the bed, and told her the true story of Christmas, that sometimes gifts arrive as whispers, sometimes as second chances, and sometimes as the courage to stand in a garden and choose the right kind of winter. When I left, I paused at the door and looked back at my son, who stood at the bottom of the stairs, hands at his sides, as unarmed as a man can be. "We'll be all right," I said, "if you work for it." He nodded. "I will." "Good," I said, "because I'll be watching." Then I stepped into the night, where the cold felt clean and the sky looked like it had kept a promise. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and help us reach our first 1,000 subscribers. Your support means the world to us.